Hola y bienvenidos angelinos. Welcome back Galaxy fans to the Galaxy Guy Show. Como siempre, I'm your host Chris Maldonado, and we are coming to you today in a much better mood than expected. I mean, look, the Galaxy just snapped their 11-game winless streak against a very, very strong Western Conference opponent. That opponent being, of course, the Portland Timbers. They were just coming off an 8-game unbeaten streak. They outscored their opponents 18 goals during those 8 games. The Portland Timbers were on fire going into this game. Now, was it the best game the Galaxy has played all season? Heck no. By far it wasn't, but it was perhaps the most important game that the LA Galaxy has played so far all season long, and thankfully the result went in our favor. We're going to talk about why that win was massive for the Galaxy at this stage in the season. We'll talk about everything that happened during this Saturday's game versus the Portland Timbers. We will provide our analysis and the match breakdown, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as we always do. You guys know how it goes. Of course, to talk about all of this and to help us make sense of it all, we have joining us someone you guys are familiar with, one of the usuals. You guys know him, the man with the stats, Mr. Casey Cagle. How are you doing tonight, Casey?
Feeling better than last week, Chris, so I'm ready to talk some Galaxy.
Right on, man. Great having you on. Always a pleasure. Also joining us tonight is someone that most Galaxy fans will already know. He's on plenty of the shows, the Galaxy. He covers the Galaxy. He covers other teams across MLS, covers other sports. A good friend of the show. He's been on here before. I am, of course, speaking of Mr. Andy Diosa of Yahoo Sports. Hola, Andy. ¿Cómo estás, hermano? How are you?
What's going on, y'all? Happy to be back. Like you said, in better times for the Galaxy. Definitely helps to speak on after a win and things kind of trending in the right direction. But once again, happy to be on the show with you guys, man.
Awesome, man. Pleasure having you on tonight. Pleasure having you on again. For the one or two Galaxy fans out there who may not be entirely sure who you are, you just please tell everyone a little bit of what you do as a reporter, the teams that you cover in the league, the games you go to.
Most definitely, yeah. So I'm a writer and editor for Yahoo Sports. So I do mostly soccer coverage, covering MLS from a larger standpoint, larger point of view, just trying to see different things around the league. But I'm based in LA, so I'm on the floor with the Galaxy. I'm on the floor with LAFC, and just trying to write bigger picture stories more than just like the recaps, and kind of push things forward or kind of peel things apart. One of the latest things I did with the Galaxy was pretty cool. Chris was there with the Hispanic Heritage Month, where I kind of connected with them through what they were doing with AFCHA, the organization that kind of helped put that stuff together. And it was great just, seeing how different fans represented their culture in the time during Hispanic Heritage Month, and seeing so many Central Americans before the game and then during the game, after the game. So just different things like that. But yeah, I'm here. I cover probably mostly LA sides, but yeah, I try to take a look at the league from a whole, but that's kind of what I do there.
And don't get it twisted. This man is not just a sports journalist. He trains like an athlete himself. I follow him on Instagram, and this man goes hard.
I'm actually gonna go running after I record the show, so I
There you go.
I got my miles in for the day, so I gotta go do that.
Hey, that's awesome, dude. So it's safe to say we're in good hands. Andy knows what he's talking about. Follows the league. He's an MLS expert. Knows the game. Knows it inside out. So we're covered for tonight. Okay. As you guys know, Matt took the night off. We gave him the night off. He had some built up vacation time, so we gave him some time off. We're wishing him the best, him and his wonderful family, a wonderful week. But with that said, Andy, Casey, what do you guys say we talk some LA Galaxy soccer?
Let's do it.
Do it.
Great. Let's do it. As we kick this off here, we have to talk about the build up to this game, right? Prior to this Saturday's game, the Galaxy was coming off an 11-game winless streak. Their last victory was August 4th. That's what, 3 months ago? 3 months ago. That's how long they went without a win, right? So very disappointing drop off in form, to say the least, for the Galaxy. They dropped an ungodly amount of points in that time. I mean, they went from battling for first place. They were first place for what, like 2 hours, a couple months ago, right? To sitting in second, third place for a couple months, and now they're straight up battling for a playoff spot. Period. Right? They're pretty close to dropping off. So thankfully, in that time, several other results from across the league, other teams in the conference, they went in our favor, and the Galaxy held on to that sixth place spot in the playoff race. So it brings up a question, right? And we've talked about it a little bit, but I'll ask our guest, Andy Diosa, this question first. You followed this team all season. You've kept up with the rest of the league as well. What is the main issue that you see with this LA Galaxy going from top contender just a couple months ago to going 11 games without a victory and barely holding on to a playoff spot? What went wrong for the Galaxy, Andy?
I think they hit a wall. I think they hit like a lull in the schedule where people that are not used to MLS kind of have to get used to certain parts of the schedule in terms of there being international breaks and you having to play through those with teammates being not with you and being across the world. The jam-packed schedule where there's 3 games in a week, sometimes the traveling conditions, all things that are factors, not excuses. But I think that with such a new team and having players that have come from all different places, there was a bit of a wall that they hit, and they just never seemed to be comfortable as they were in the beginning of the year. I think I said this the other day to somebody, like in the beginning of the year, they were just all clicking at the right time. It's not that they were doing anything specifically great. I think they were just all playing together. And I think throughout the stretch where they were not getting results, it was just collectively, it wasn't there. There were some players that were on, there were a lot of players that were not on. And at the end of the day, that's what ends up costing you points in a league like MLS. Obviously, the defensive problems continued, and that's always going to be, a main issue if you have defensive problems in terms of winning and losing games. But
Sure.
I just think that there was a bit of a lack of cohesion in that stretch that they just anything that kind of, I guess, Greg Vanney was trying to throw out there or things that he was trying to improve, they just weren't happening. And I think the best way to really prove that is Vanney was visibly getting frustrated after many games, and he was like not being shy about calling players out and not being shy about where the team needed to improve. And I think that Vanney himself was kind of feeling like, man, we're not, being playing terrible, but we're just not getting results. So I think it was just kind of that rut in the time of the season that it came at the wrong time. But like I was saying to you before the show started, if you could put a few wins together here in this last little stretch and the playoffs start, a lot of that stuff is irrelevant. Like we know the way the playoff system is that sometimes the regular seasons just don't matter. Once that playoff hits, it's a whole different ballgame. So I think that's a little bit of what kind of plagued them throughout that run.
Yeah, especially in MLS. But that seems to be the big problem right there. You hit the nail on the head. It's the cohesion, right? That this team just, they've had these moments where they seem to be working well together, and then there's just moments where there's no chemistry between certain players, right? Like the offense just seems disjointed. People aren't really understanding or playing well with Chicharito. It's all over the place, and it's we're at that point of the season now where that should have already been solidified, concrete, right? But here we are still talking about it, with 5 games left to go. So it's very interesting. But let's dive deeper into this. Let's get into the meat of this sandwich. Andy, Casey, let's talk about the good moments of this game. As we naturally do, we always start off with talking about the good moments. This is the section of the show where we do that. So despite the underwhelming win, because it was very underwhelming, there were a handful of good moments during this match. Casey, I'll start with you. I know you took plenty of notes. What would you say were some of the good moments from this game against the Portland Timbers on Saturday? Some positive takeaways, perhaps?
Well, I'll tell you what, definitely more positive takeaways than I've had from games previously in recent memory. So that is definitely a plus. Outside of the obvious, we get 3 points at home, which feels like forever since we've had a home victory. We snapped our winless streak, like you said, and snapped Portland's 8-game unbeaten streak, which feels pretty good. Beating a team that's ranked above us in the West standings, especially in the situation that we're in.
Mhm.
There was a lot of good possession and passing last night. 62% possession overall last night over Portland, which is Portland is known as a possession-based team, and to be able to have the majority of that stat in a game like last night is pretty telling. And 87% passing accuracy last night, which is
That's impressive.
pretty impressive. Yeah, Barcelona levels of impressive, if you ask me. And the chance creation was really good last night. We had 20 shots overall, 9 on target, and I think that was just a result of better ball movement. There wasn't necessarily some good off the ball movement, which I'll get to in the later segments of the show here. But the chance creation was there. We just weren't capitalizing on all of the chances we had. So there was a lot of good there, and we did a really good job of containing players like Blanco and the Chara brothers. Synergy between the center backs, Raveloson and Jonah dos Santos kept the pressure up most of the game, and it was pretty physical between those players and Blanco and Diego and Jimmy Chara. So I feel like that stifled a lot of Portland's attack last night, and I think that was really well done. And I think that was ultimately one of the pillars of the strategy going into last night's game from Greg. And there were some standout players last night. Williams looked really good last night. He had
He looked better.
100%. Yeah, he
Yeah.
had 100% success rate in aerial duels,
Hmm.
which is great considering he's received a lot of balls back there over the top from Portland. He looked really comfortable on the ball too. Him and Dupuis as a center back pairing. We were talking about this in our group chat earlier. Out of their 4 starts together, they have 2 wins, 1 draw, and 1 loss, which seems pretty good statistically. To want to start them through the rest of the season and into the playoffs.
Yeah.
Victor Vasquez always also looked great. He helped create a lot of chances. He had 7 shot creation attempts, which
Plus
is
an
just
assist.
insane. And he got the assist last night.
Right.
Hamalainen looked great. He's always capable of finding the space. There were multiple instances last night where there was an opportunity for a cross field, forward ball to Hamalainen because he had acres of real estate all by himself on that left side. So it's just a matter of him being able to get more of those opportunities on the ball and find those opportunities forward. Ephraim looked great last night as well. He had a high pass completion rate. He makes really confident and strong runs forward. I said this maybe halfway through the season, and I'll echo the sentiment now. I think he could make the case for a number 10 in maybe 2 or 3 years. Maybe not with this Galaxy team, but with an MLS team for certain, I think. And he drew the foul that led to the game-winning penalty goal. So
Thank God.
very effective in the minutes he had on the pitch. Chicharito, 5 shots total, 3 on target, 1 scored. And then Depew. I was really watching Depew last night. I was really impressed with him. He had the highest successful
I
pressure
like
rating of
him.
he had the
Yeah.
highest successful pressure rating of any Galaxy player last night. 94% pass completion rate, which is really good for a center back. He's extremely confident in the air. I mean, he was winning most of his aerial duels, and was extremely physical in getting to those opportunities. And he made the difference in many questionable moments in the box. I mean, there were a lot of pinball instances in our own third that Dupuis just cleaned up quickly with a clearance up top or an outlet pass out wide to the wing. And I think he looked really calm and composed. And like I said, him and Williams paired together in the center back positions, I think should be the stalwart lineup moving forward.
That's my positive take on the night, and I'll get more into that because we did talk a little bit more in detail in our group chat, like you were saying. But I'll ask Andy this same question. Casey kind of covered a lot of what I was going to say. But let me ask Andy this. Andy, what were the good moments that you saw from this LA Galaxy team on Saturday? Anything that stood out to you as a positive takeaway?
For sure. I think the control, I think they were, like we just mentioned, the cohesion is what lacked. And I think yesterday they kind of showed, or Saturday they kind of showed that that's what they had. I mean, I think what was it, 70-30 possession at halftime? That's
Mm-hmm.
not something that we were used to seeing from this Galaxy team. And it's once again in a moment like this where it's a high pressure game, it's at home, exactly what's riding on it. I think a coach like Vaney is going to have a team set to be very clear in what they want to do, and I think they were clear in that in the first half, creating chances. They obviously weren't able to get a goal, but they were dominating the game. There was no way to go about it differently, and that's exactly what you need to present in a game like that. So I think that was very positive. And going forward too, Chicharito is. I think that's a typical Chicharito game, if we could call it that. Like, he's going to get his chances. He might miss, and he scores one that probably just. I mean, it's a fluke play by the defender, but like you have to also be a good attacker to be able to get a foot on that and score in that moment. You still have to follow the play. So those things come with Chicharito's, experience. So I think for him, that's good there. And I think my main point too is exactly what Efra did coming on. I think I've been saying this for a while now, and I get it because he's a younger player, but I just think that I agree with him being able to blossom in within a few years, even if it's not with the Galaxy, because he's just gaining so much confidence, and you could tell. And he even spoke about it yesterday, or Greg spoke about his attributes yesterday after the game, and was kind of saying like, hey, this is what we want him to do. We want him to move forward. He's one of our players that has, I believe he used the term finishing qualities or finishing abilities, which is what the Galaxy need. Like, you can't just rely on Chicharito to be the goal scorer. You need somebody else that's even going to try to manufacture stuff. So I think all in all, it was a lot of positive takeaways. But I think the main for me for sure is the cohesion that they showed, just being able to kind of dominate a game possession wise, creating chances wise, because they were all over them, at least in that first half. The second half opened up a little more, but the first half for sure. And then just the I guess the best way to put it is the depth at this point, because whether or not we could argue over if we think Kevin Cabral should be starting or not, but the fact that you're able to bring pieces off of the bench that change games is a huge deal, not only for the Galaxy now, but just in general, in the terms of if you're talking about playoffs where they're just one-off games, that's a big deal. And I think that Greg, maybe now it's late, but maybe now finally is learning exactly what he has to maneuver in certain situations, and that's big time.
Right. Now, if only we could have him play Dijon from the start.
That's a whole different story. Right?
That's a whole different story, right? We'll eventually get an answer on that one, but yeah, listen, I agree with everything you guys said. There were plenty of good takeaways from this. The possession, the control, right? The Galaxy. Listen, it's the Portland Timbers. The Portland Timbers has one of the best midfields in the league, and the Galaxy was able to hold that control, that possession from a team like Portland, right? Portland did a lot of absorbing pressure, like the entire first half, right? They kind of loosened up a little bit in the second half, but the Galaxy did well. And my positive takeaway from all of this, and I'm going to have to echo what Matt said before during his show notes. He sent us his notes. And I have to agree with his takeaway. Same thing that Casey said. The defense in this game looked better than it has in a very long time. It wasn't perfect by far. There was still a lot of shakiness back there. But the pairing of Williams and Dupuis at center back, I agree with them. They do compensate for each other's weaknesses pretty well, and they complement each other's strengths. A point that Mad made that just makes sense to me. It's an excellent point to make. Dupuis was a former striker at a collegiate level, college, right? So he knows how to read the movements of a striker. He knows how to track the strikers. He knows how they think. So it helps him, and I've noticed it as well. Not only does that help, but he's also a very tall guy, very agile, very athletic for his size. Guys of his size aren't usually that fast. So him and Williams obviously being the more mature guy, the guy with the most experience, European experience at the championship level, they're compensating each other very well. I like this pairing. So going forward, I would like to see them play together a lot more often. Sega Coulibaly hasn't really paired well with anyone he's been paired with. And that's troubling, especially given that we're the home stretch now, 5 games. You don't really want to mess with that too much, So it's been good. It's been good. And look, we talk about the good points. To me, honestly, the best point the entire night by far, right? This team had its shortcomings. It wasn't the best game they've played, But at the end of the night, the best takeaway is that the Galaxy won one of the most crucial games of the season so far against an opponent that was on fire, unbeaten in 8. They had scored 18 goals during those 8 games. This was a team that should have steamrolled right over the Galaxy because we were coming in terrible form, right? But they didn't. The Galaxy held their own. It wasn't perfect, but they squeaked out a win. You can chop some of that up to luck, right? Which this victory, these 3 points effectively keeps us in the playoff race, right? Mm-hmm. At least for now. So as we know, there's 5 games left. There's 15 points on the table. The Galaxy needs to earn at least 9 more points in order to be above that 50-point mark, which is usually the one that guarantees that you enter playoffs. So we did the math in the last show. 9 points. That's what would just about guarantee playoffs for the LA Galaxy. So this win, crucial. That's my best takeaway on the night. If there's anything else you guys want to add, another positive takeaway. If not, we can move on to the bad.
I think it's huge just to kind of harp on that point. Like the last time they won that statement game, maybe I'm just being naive, but it was the opening game of the season where they were down in Miami and the game was kind of weird and they won at the end. But I think it was just more so the reaction of the team at that point. And that kind of led them to start so hot. And that if they could recreate a moment like a character building win like they always talk about, if this could be a moment like that, then that's a huge deal. Because I think that it's, you're in the locker room and you're kind of down on yourselves for not getting these results. But I think recently they have been a little more confident because they were playing a lot better and just getting unlucky. But whatever, if the luck breaks your way, if you get, a moment here and there, whatever, they get that huge win, like you said, they finally show in a crucial moment in the season that they needed what they needed to do and they did it. That could go a long way. So it could be one of those wins that kind of boosts them forward.
Yeah. It's one of those games, right? Just like Sasha said during the last press conference last week, all it takes is one moment, right? And this could have been it, especially against a good team. It does something psychologically to a player, to a team, right? It motivates you. So, but we're not sports psychologists here. We're just guys talking into a mic, right? Speculating. So we covered the good, obviously. Now, of course, we have to move on to the bad moments of this game. It was a win, but there were plenty of bad moments as well. Let me start off with this one here because I have to say this. I just have to say it. It seemed like the Galaxy had a bet going on before the game to see who could shoot the most shots directly at the Portland goalie, Steve Clark. I mean, this team struggled to score goals in the second half of this 2021 season so far. They have struggled to score goals. We've talked about it to death on this show. It's like an offensive impotence with this team, right? And in this match, their scoring impotence was on full display. I believe Chicharito had 3 different shots at Steve Clark. I mean, directly at Steve Clark. Grandsir, Revelson had one directly at Steve Clark. Cabral had a couple. He had that shot. There was a rebound. And then again, he shot it directly at Steve Clark. Steve Clark had 7 total saves on the night. That's a little more above average than most goalkeepers have in one night. And the Galaxy made it very, very easy for him. He had a relatively easy night, right? Despite all the saves, despite all the shots, the Galaxy had 20 shots on the night. 20 shots. That blows my mind. That's double what Portland had. But let's be totally honest here. Let's be brutally honest. If that fluke nutmeg through Larry Mabiala's legs hadn't happened, right, the Portland defender, and if Portland's Van Rankin had not made that silly tackle in the 90th minute in the box against Efrain Alvarez, this Galaxy team would have finished the game scoreless, and they would have lost 3 crucial points. And I do believe their season would have been on life support if they had lost or tied this game. There was a ton of luck here at play. I mean, the Galaxy had those 20 shots, and yet the best they could do was a fluky goal that was luck and a penalty. Definitely not a good look for the most expensive offense or one of the most expensive offenses in the league. What do you guys think? Andy, what were your negatives from this game?
I think it kind of ties on to what I was going to say. And mine is what you mentioned. Like, why have we not seen Chicharito and Dejan go from the start? I feel like every time we ask Greg about it, he's like, yeah, we're kind of just working and seeing. But it's like there's no more time for that at this point. Like, I know we weigh what he did in the Tráfico game like to be, of such importance, and maybe we haven't seen enough of a sample size with him. But it's like if you once again, if you get to the point like if you peel back the layers in this game and having that be a lucky goal and then having the penalty be the winner, like there was creation was there, but the goals weren't there. And I think when you bring a player like that in, you kind of have to see like maybe him and Chicharito are just not working out well on the training ground because that to me is the only feasible reason why we haven't seen that pair just start a game and see what they could give us over an extended period of time. Because honestly, I think Victor Vasquez is probably the most important piece in that team when he's on, but just not in that position. I think he's great, just not in that position because I think it kind of limits him a little bit. And I think where he's most efficient is in that center midfield that he could kind of just roam freely because obviously his passing is probably the best on the team. He picks out those spots, he creates those chances, but if you have a natural striker like Chicharito, maybe you just need another striker next to him to kind of help out. So that's still been really weird to me. I think he's been decent when he comes on too, and I just know that from what we've seen, he has a lot of energy. I just don't understand why they haven't tried that out more. And you're right about that. If you look at a team that's with that build, you should be having more of an offensive, I guess, threatening presence. Which leads me to my other point, being Kevin Cabral. Like I understand, Vanny probably feels away with him and Sega, which is I think that's why it took him so long to kind of give Dupuy those ranks. But I've been saying this for a while now. Like Sega was very underwhelming. He caused the Galaxy games. Like I don't like to put it on one player, but there was definitely moments that you're kind of just like, man, if he didn't do that, the Galaxy might have won or had a different result. So I think the thing with Cabral, like he's having a little bit of let me try and hold on and build his confidence up. But once again, this is the time of the year that you can't just string onto a player because for the sake of it. I think that he said it too. Like he said it, Vanny he's been like, we need him to be better. And he just hasn't been better. And I think the more you see Efra go in, I think you see him a lot more comfortable. Yeah. And there's always been a thing about Efra that like maybe he, when he starts, he doesn't take advantage of those chances. But this season, that hasn't been the case. Maybe in the past that was. And that's a whole different, dynamic with different players on the field. But I think this season, every time Efra has started, he's been pretty significant in that offense. And if Greg talks about him saying, oh, he's one of our players that has finishing qualities and we like him to push forward because he could do X, Y, Z, everything that he's mentioned is what I haven't seen Cabral do. And that right there is the problem. So I think that that offense still has a little bit to be, worked out, like you said. And I think that it starts there. It starts with maybe letting Dayon go up and putting Efra as a convinced starter and having Cabral earn his spot back.
Yeah. No, you're right, man. Listen, Fanny hasn't given us a straight answer on this. To me, it makes no sense why a guy that had 17, 18 goals last season in the Austrian Bundesliga, he's 23, 24 years old. He's an agile guy. He's a hustler. He's like hungry for games, hungry for goals. I don't get why he's getting 10 minutes. It makes no sense to me. So it's like you say, it has to be something that's on the training pitch, right? He doesn't like what he sees. He doesn't like the chemistry. Something's going on there. It makes no sense. But I'll ask you, Casey, what were the bad moments for you in this game?
And both of your points kind of lead into my point. The attacking impotencies. And like we were talking about, possession and control of the ball was great, but my bad take was the movement of players off of the ball, and that can be applied to situations where you have a loose ball coming off of one of your shots and not having a player trail the run to punch that loose ball in. It's a lot of those situations where players off the ball are too stagnant, and it really chokes us up in transition where we should be moving the ball much, much quicker. When I alluded to it earlier, where Hamalainen and even Araujo had acres of space on the wing. They had all the space in the world to make runs and plenty of real estate, but the passing wasn't quick enough to make effective use of the space. Because, to Greg's point, 2 months ago when we played Minnesota away, where he said we are 1 or 2 passes behind the attack in transition. And he is absolutely right, because we'll have the ball in a defensive situation, we'll win the ball back, and then it remains stagnant in the back line for 3 or 4 check passes trying to move it through the channels. But it just doesn't work because nobody moves off of the ball correctly. And I think it's the result of, I think it could just be complacency. It could just be lack of understanding of game strategy. I don't know what it is, but you see players in Europe in transition. It's 1, 2 quick passes, one quick pass inside, one quick back out to the wing. He's on a run, putting a cross into the 18 and then finishes the ball. You know what I mean? It's really lacking in that regard, and that urgency just is not there.
It's frustrating to watch the Galaxy in transition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's frustrating. And then they rarely play through the middle, right? We've talked about this on the show a million times. It's very predictable at this point. Yeah. So, I mean, I agree with that. And then that's my next point when we get into the ugly. But what do you guys think? Were there any other bad moments that stuck out during this game?
I think that's everything for me.
I think we pretty much covered everything, right? I mean, it's a lot of the stuff we've been echoing game after game with the Galaxy, right? There's just really, it's the leaks that Matt talked about last week. These leaks that have been leaking little by little, game after game, every game of the season. And now it's like a full-blown, after these 11 games, it was like a full-blown flood, right? We were straight Titanic mode. We have to patch those holes. Now, jumping straight into the ugly takes, right? The ugly, we have to talk ugly. I could start with this. The ugly to me is still the same. Match after match, this Galaxy team has shown to be predictable. Other teams have studied us. They've watched plenty of our games, our footage, as we know other teams do. Any team worth their weight in salt has studied footage from other teams across the league. They know how we attack, which really is predictable. We lack very much chance creation through the center of the field. When Victor Vasquez is on, we're a little more creative through the mid. When he's off, we lose almost all creativity through the middle, right? A lot of our plays come from the wings with the predictable crossing strategy that we've seen every season since 2017. I mean, I can't count how many times our plays went through Julian Araujo last night. They just look for Julian. They look for Julian. They look for that right side or the left side. It's very rarely through the middle, those through passes. So it's rinse and repeat, right? Balls through the wings. The defense knows exactly how to defend us now. Any team that's worth anything knows how to defend the Galaxy. And then Galaxy fans ask themselves, why are we scoring a decent amount of goals at the start of the season? And then now, why does it seem like the Galaxy can't score goals? It's because the rest of MLS has caught on to our strategy and they know how we play. It's very predictable. This is exactly why. The rest of the league prepares for us. They know how to play us, and it makes defending us easier. Now, this ties into my ugly take because the Galaxy got lucky here in this game. And had the Galaxy lost, it would have been an Everest-sized mountain to climb for the Galaxy in order to reach the playoff summit, right? Because as we know, 5 games left to go now, and the Galaxy needs 9 out of those last 15 available points. 3 of those games will be against extremely tough opponents, right? 3 games on the road. Mm-hmm. And 2 of those are against Kansas City, which is a dominant team, and Seattle, which is, in my opinion, the best team in the league, right? In Seattle. Yeah. So, we're playing Houston at home. Houston's always a tough team to play in Houston. Always a tough team. We're playing Dallas at home. Dallas already showed that they could beat us at home this season. So it's hard, right? So that to me is something that's ongoing. It continues to be a problem with the Galaxy. It's the ugliest take so far this season, is that we've become predictable. Our strategy is stale, and there seems to be little adjustment going on, right? You throw something extra there like a Dijon and Chicharito starting. We haven't seen that yet. We've seen Victor Vasquez starting as a second striker next to Chicharito, which blows my mind. But let me get your ugly takes on this. Casey, what are some ugly takes, man, so far?
My ugly takes really didn't have one to do with the game, but one of my biggest ugly takes was the pitch condition last night. I don't know if any of you noticed, but there was a huge worn out hole near the center circle where it was practically dirt. It looked like they had spray painted green over it. The pitch was really dry. The grounds crew had to soak the pitch with sprinklers before the game and at halftime. Like, I'm talking a real good soaking. And San Diego State had a game at Dignity Health Sports Park a week before. And I can understand having a football game a couple days before the Galaxy play, but a week before is kind of just poor form from the grounds crew, considering the part of the season that we're in. And I also don't understand why San Diego State would play in Los Angeles County, but that's a conversation for another day. My other ugly point: inconsistent refereeing. You guys who watch the show know my complaints with pro referees.
Oh, yes.
You've probably been tallying up my complaints. But Victor Rivas last night was just absolutely terrible. Very inconsistent, very soft and questionable yellow cards against the Galaxy. There were some very hard tackles that went uncarded. Araujo luckily was able to draw a card for a foul he received in the second half where he went down really hard. And luckily we got the penalty call the way we did, because considering the rest of his game last night, Victor Rivas didn't seem like he was gonna call that for us. So Victor Rivas, you get my ugly point this week, and you've joined the wheel of the damned of pro referees. So
I don't think there's one so far that's been on your good graces, Casey.
You're on the dartboard, brother.
What do you say, Andy? Any ugly takes from this game, or ugly takes from the LA Galaxy season so far?
I think from this game, I would say, and I guess it's kind of like an overarching thing too, is just starting. Like we talked about how they started this game well, but at the same time, we're giving Greg his credit for making the moves and making the right sales. But sometimes I see the lineups and I'm like, man, maybe there's different ways that Greg could approach certain games that maybe you wouldn't have to struggle this much. And I know Portland is a tough team and everything is subjective. I'm not one that loves to criticize lineups too much, but I harp back onto the Kevin Cabral point. Like, I think the sample size is large enough that he needs to. I don't think he could be a starter on this team in the moment that they're in right now. I think it's as simple as that. How you replace him, and we also have to realize Leggett wasn't in the starting lineup yesterday either, so that changes. I understand he's coming off international break, but that changes a lot of the dynamic of how he forms that team. But I think there's enough pieces there with Vasquez, with Leggett, with Efra, that Cabral just clearly is a player that comes in as a sub. So that's been one thing, like I said, I've been harping on all season.
Yeah.
My ugly for LA Galaxy in general is the moment that they're in. Because like you said, we're realizing, right, there's these 5 games left. And the next 2, I believe, are against the Texas teams. But then after that, it's Seattle. Yeah, then it's Seattle, Kansas, and Minnesota. And those are 3 teams directly above the Galaxy. Like, that's not an easy schedule to finish with. And granted, I mean, they're probably still going to be fighting because they're fighting for seeding too. So it's not like they're just going to roll over and concede any points to the Galaxy. And you think about, once again, the stretch that they were on, it's like, how did the Galaxy get here? Like, they could have comfortably been in that 4 spot, in that 5 spot. And I just mentioned to you, like, if Portland slips up one more time and the Galaxy do get results, they could sneak back up to that 4 spot. But we were, say a month ago, listening to Greg Vane talk about, we're just like aiming to get this home playoff game. Like, we want, the Dignity Health Sports Park to be a fortress. And now we're like, they just trying to make the playoffs. And I was like, that's a night and day. It's not like LAFC, who has been struggling all year and is like still in that same boat. Like the Galaxy went from a high to like a low very quickly. Yeah. I mean, people could blame it on a lot of different things, but I think that is a very overarching ugly point for the team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The inconsistent lineups, it's still, I'm still struggling to understand that. Positioning that just makes no sense sometimes, right? And it does, to a point you made earlier, Andy, it just seems like some players are being almost guaranteed a roster spot for some weird reason. Like Cabral, it took such a long time to get him benched. He was benched for a couple of games. Mm-hmm. Now he seems to be back in the starting lineup. Grant Sear was benched for a couple of games, back in the starting lineup. It's so unpredictable, and it just hasn't created that consistency that we need. Especially now, 5 games to go, you would expect the team to already be at a consistent lineup. We're not there yet. We haven't been there yet. So I can agree with that ugly take. Anything else to add, guys? Anything on the ugly side? Just the refereeing. Terrible refereeing, man. But I think we got through all of it, right? It's good. At the end of the day, Galaxy fans, you can rest easy knowing that the Galaxy is still very much in the playoff race. We're not going to sugarcoat it. It's going to be hard. It's still an uphill battle for the Galaxy. There's a lot of hard teams coming up. The schedule's not going to be easy. A lot of games that are coming quickly, right? One after another against tough opponents. So not sugarcoating anything. It's going to be tough, but we're optimistic. So with that said, guys, if there's anything else to add, we could probably wrap that up. What do you say?
Yeah, I think that's the best point. And
Yeah.
the Galaxy control their own destiny, and you can't say that about a lot of the teams that are in this Western Conference race. I think right now Seattle's actually Kansas City's actually losing to Vancouver at halftime, so that's gonna make things very complicated for LAFC and teams that are down there trying to fight for a spot. So I think the thing about the Galaxy is, like Greg has talked about, some wins are professional wins, some wins are ugly wins, some wins, and it's like these 5 games you're gonna know what this team is made out of, and it's a good moment for them moving forward, because next year obviously there's gonna be probably a few different players and different looks, or just different tactics for Greg. And at the end of the day, like I said, the Galaxy are not relying on other results. For sure, they would like other results to go their way, but they control their own destiny. So this is where you're really going to have to see what this team is made out of. And once again, if they do get hot and they get a couple of results and they get a spot, it's going to be a tough team. And once playoff starts, anything can happen. And I think that there's a few teams in this race, maybe Real Salt Lake and Colorado and certain teams that would benefit. The Galaxy wouldn't be too scared of playing, unlike going straight up to Seattle or playing, in certain situations. So I think that there should be some optimism for sure. I think that game against the Timbers helps that a lot, but they have to continue it in the next few games, and then we'll see from there.
Absolutely. The fight continues. It's going to be a very hard fight. This Wednesday, October 20th, that's the LA Galaxy at Houston against the Houston Dynamo, 5:30 p.m. Keep an eye out on this game, because the Galaxy can win some points on the road here. 1 point can be big for the Galaxy on the road here. 3 points would be massive. Okay. Houston's a tough place to play, so keep an eye out for this one. It'll be very indicative of where the Galaxy's going to land after this game. So we'll be back next week, talk about some more Galaxy. I want to thank you guys, Andy and Casey, for being on the show. Andy, if you could tell people where to find you on Instagram, social media, your socials, if you want to plug those.
Yeah, most definitely. Twitter is just my name is Andy and then _ Diossa, Dossa. Just there. I have all my writing there. I put my articles out, put my great hot takes out. Kind of, tweet during the games, tweet after the games, tweet some quotes. Sacha Kljesn's quote yesterday didn't get any traction from anywhere, and I think it was amazing because he said he wanted to jump into the stands and celebrate, but he realized he had a yellow. So he jumped out because he didn't want to get red carded about some bullshit or whatever he said, and I thought it was hilarious. And I tweeted out, and everybody was like, "Oh my god, this is great!" So yeah, I'm just on there, just trying to do the best I can. But yeah, Twitter is usually where it goes down.
Absolutely, awesome, man. And we hope to have you again, hopefully during the playoffs. Hopefully during the playoffs. So awesome, Casey. Pleasure again, brother. Wishing all of our Galaxy fans out there a very happy week. We'll see you guys on Wednesday. We'll see you guys on Sunday, and we'll see you guys again on Monday for our next week's show. So we want to say goodbye to everyone, and we wish you well. Hasta la próxima. Bye bye.